I ran a 3:05 marathon, my very first, without a taper. I signed up for the race 3 weeks before. I had no plan, and my longest run, it was just 4 days before the marathon. Somehow, I won the whole thing. Now, 6 years later, I have run a 2:46 marathon. I'm training for the Olympics, and I coach runners full time. And today, I'm asking the question I wish someone had answered for me back then. Is a taper really necessary? Or was skipping it actually part of the reason I ran so well that day? Because here's the thing. Tapering goes against every instinct we have as runners. You spend months building fitness, getting faster, getting stronger, and then suddenly your training plan tells you to pull back. And we start wondering, will I lose my fitness? Why do my legs feel worse? What if I'm peaking too early? Should I squeeze in one last hard session? And what if the taper ruins my race? That's exactly what we're diving into, but I'm not giving you the answer just yet, because this isn't a black and white issue. And honestly, what you do in the taper might be the very thing that decides whether race day is a breakthrough or blow up. So in this video, I'll break it all down using my own race experience, what I've learned from coaching runners all over the world, and the science behind tapering. So we'll cover what the taper actually does to your body, who actually needs to taper and who might not, why it feels so weird, and what to do about it, the most common taper mistakes, how to taper differently depending on your race distance, and finally, is the taper overrated or essential? So stick with me, let's unpack it step by step. What the taper actually does. So the taper is when you strategically reduce your training volume in the final 1 to 3 weeks before your race. Not to lose fitness, but to let your body recover, adapt, and actually peak. So now let's get specific. Here's what's going on physiologically when you taper. Your glycogen stores refill. So glycogen is your main source of fuel during endurance racing. Proper taper gives your muscles time to fully top off, meaning more energy on race day. Another thing that happens is that muscle damage gets repaired. So during hard training, you accumulate micro tears in your muscles, and tapering allows repairs, reducing inflammation and soreness before your race. In addition, your hormonal balance improves. So research shows that cortisol, your primary stress hormone, tends to drop during a taper, while anabolic hormones like testosterone increase, which enhances recovery and muscle function. Also, neuromuscular coordination sharpens. So you regain that pop in your stride because your central nervous system gets a break. And that's why strides and short pickups during taper week feel so good. You're priming your neuromuscular system. Also, mitochondrial efficiency increases. So one of the most cited studies that I'll link right here, trained endurance athletes showed increased mitochondrial enzyme activity and time to exhaustion after a well-executed taper. So what's the actual performance impact? So a meta-analysis in Medicine and Science and Sports and Exercise showed that tapering can improve endurance performance by an average of 3%, with some athletes seeing as much as 6%. For context, in a 3.5-hour marathon, 3% equals over 6 minutes. And that's honestly the difference between qualifying for Boston or just missing it. But what if I haven't trained much? Should I still taper? That's the question I get asked a lot. And honestly, I don't think anyone really talks about this, or maybe I've just never seen a video on it. Because here's the thing, when I signed up for my first marathon just 3 weeks before race day, rest wasn't exactly what came to mind. I wasn't thinking about glycogen stores or super compensation. I was thinking, I need to do more, I need to catch up. And honestly, in that situation, not doing a full taper made sense. I hadn't built much volume, so I didn't have much fatigue to unload. But here's where I absolutely got it wrong. I went from never having run longer than 1 hour and 45 minutes to running 40 kilometers just 4 days before the actual marathon. And not only that, I had zero sense of intensity control. I thought I was running easy because I wasn't sprinting or pushing as fast as I could, but I was still trying to run fast because back then I thought faster always meant better. But if you've been subscribed to this channel for a while, you know that the further I've gotten into this running journey, the more I've realized Smarter is the answer, not harder. So pushing paces might feel productive, but it leads to more fatigue, slower recovery, and very quickly overdoing your training. And this is where so many runners go wrong during the taper. Which brings us to, so let's talk about what I learned the hard way and the mistakes I now help my athletes avoid. Because even if you've built the perfect training block, the taper is where it's easy to sabotage your race without even realizing it. Mistake number 1, cutting too much intensity. So tapering doesn't mean doing nothing. It means reducing volume, but still keeping some intensity to stay sharp. So you still want strides, short intervals, or light threshold work in smaller doses. This keeps your neuromuscular system firing and helps you feel connected to your stride. So personally, I love adding a short speed session just slightly faster than race pace during taper week. Why? It boosts confidence and it helps you feel your race rhythm without overloading your body. So this could be something like 6 by 1 minute at 5K pace or 3 by 1K at 10K effort, short, controlled, and always followed by a full recovery. So remember, it's not about building fitness, it's about sharpening it. Mistake number 2 is panic training. This was 100% me. Running 40 kilometers just 4 days before the marathon. Why? Because I felt behind and I wanted to make up for lost time. You can't build fitness in the last 10 to 14 days. You can only add fatigue, and fatigue hides fitness. And that's why taper week is all about trusting the work you've already done. Mistake number 3, pushing the pace. So if you're running easy but constantly thinking, I should be faster, you're likely running too hard. Your heart rate might be too high, and your recovery suffers. And if you're stacking tired legs day after day, your race will feel like survival, not performance. So careful intensity control is everything. In my coaching, we use heart rate targets and time-based progression to make sure recovery and stress are in balance, especially during the taper. Mistake number 4 is underfueling. So you're running less. So yes, you probably will eat a little less. That's normal. But the mistake is ending up in a calorie deficit during your taper. So taper week is when your body needs enough energy to recover, repair, and refill glycogen stores. That means you still need to eat enough, especially carbohydrates. Even if your total calorie burn drops, your carb intake should stay high to fully top off fuel stores for race day. This is part of why the taper is so essential. So think slightly smaller portions, or fewer snacks, but meals that are still carb-rich and supportive of recovery. The goal isn't to restrict, the goal is to arrive fully fueled. And if you're curious about carb loading, when it's necessary, who should do it, and how to do it right, then make sure you subscribe so you don't miss that video. It's coming soon. Mistake number 5 is trying something new. Race week is not the time to try new shoes, a new breakfast, or new pre-run ritual. What feels exciting now can become unpredictable on race day. So my advice is to stick to what your body already trusts. How to taper the right way by race distance. So before we get into specific durations, I want to be clear. You'll often hear things like cut mileage by 30% or don't increase by more than 10% per week. And while those can be helpful starting points, your body doesn't operate on formulas. Your body doesn't know percentages. It knows stress, it knows fatigue, and it knows how well you've recovered. And that's why I don't build my training plans around rigid math. I build them around principles: smart progression, careful stress management, and structured recovery. In fact, one thing I do differently in my coaching and training plans is go hard on periodization, which means we don't wait until taper week to start recovering. We're recovering all along the way through built-in deload weeks and intentional cutback blocks. So by the time race week comes, you're not hanging on by a thread. You're strong, responsive, and ready, which means we often don't need to taper as aggressively at the end because your body isn't destroyed. So the numbers I'm about to share, they are not hard rules. They are flexible guidelines based on how much training stress you've built up and how well you've recovered from it. Marathon taper guidelines. So taper is usually 2 to 3 weeks if training was intense and consistent. I like to reduce volume by roughly 40 to 60% depending on how fatigued you are. And I keep 1 to 2 light intensity sessions with reduced reps depending on how many you have per week. The longest run is typically 2 to 3 weeks before your race, and in the final week, you want short, easy runs with strides. If your training included regular deloads and you're feeling strong, a 10 to 14 day taper may be enough. Here are my half marathon taper guidelines. So taper usually is between 10 to 14 days. You reduce volume moderately and include race pace efforts and 1 short threshold session. Final long run is usually about 10 days out. 10K and 5K taper guidelines. So taper is usually more around 5 to 7 days. You maintain intensity with short intervals, so 200 or 400 meters, strides. You also have a slight drop in total mileage, and you focus on staying sharp, not stale. The key takeaway is don't just follow numbers, follow how your body feels. Tapering is not about doing less for the sake of it. It's about doing less with purpose so you show up sharp, not flat. And if you're thinking, wait, I want a plan like that with periodization, recovery weeks, and a smarter taper, I've got you. So all my running plans from 5K to marathon and from 3 to 7 days of running per week are built around the exact principles I've shared in this video and in all my other videos. So heart rate based training, not random pacing, and I give you precise heart rate targets based on your data and help you actually understand what your heart rate is telling you. I do time-based runs because every runner is at a different level, so running for time, not distance, evens the playing field and ensures the right effort for your current fitness level. I do built-in deload weeks, so you actually absorb your training instead of just piling on more and more. I do smart progression and recovery, so each phase built on the last with intentional variation and adaptation. I do taper based on training load, so not cookie cutter formulas. Your taper is based on how much stress your body has actually handled over the period of the training plan. So these plans are designed for runners who want to feel strong, stay injury-free, and actually enjoy the process while still chasing PRs the smart way. So if that sounds like you, then check out the plans linked below and let's train smarter, not harder. So the physical part of the taper is only half the story. Mentally, this is where doubt, restlessness, and overthinking can creep in if you let it. Here's how I approach the mental side of taper week. I prioritize sleep. This is the single most effective recovery tool. So I try to go to bed just 30 minutes earlier and I limit my screen time at night. And I actually made a whole video on my top sleep tips for runners, so make sure to check out that video if you haven't already. I'll link it right here. I also hydrate well, so I treat hydration like fueling, consistent, not random, small sips throughout the day, not panic chug the night before. Practice your race day fueling, not just your gut, but your mindset. So knowing your plan builds confidence and helps eliminate last minute stress. Visualize the race. So I literally walk through race day in my mind, from what I'll wear to how I'll feel at mile 20, and most importantly, how I'll respond when it gets hard. That mental rehearsal makes a huge difference for me. Do less, but do it with purpose. So taper week isn't about being passive. It's about stripping away the noise and focusing on the actions that matter most. So is a taper overrated or essential? The taper feels overrated because it feels weird. You're doing less and you start doubting everything. But if you've done the work, tapering is essential. It allows the stress and training you've accumulated to actually translate into performance. So there's no universal formula, just intelligent adjustment. The real mistake isn't tapering. It's not trusting the taper you've earned. So to conclude, is a taper overrated or essential? It depends on your training, it depends on your goals. But if your goal is to show up and run your best race, then yes, a taper absolutely matters. And honestly, I'll probably always wonder how much better I could have done in my first marathon if I traded that 40-kilometer run 4 days before the race for a proper taper. That's exactly what I changed going into my 2:46 marathon. I stopped trying to cram, I trained smarter, and I finally gave my body a chance to show what it was capable of. So let me know in the comments, have you ever skipped a taper? Did it help or totally backfire? And if you want a training plan that blends heart rate zones, smart recovery, and the right taper for you, then check out my programs linked below. And if you're wondering how to pick the right workout for your goals, then watch this video next. Thank you so much for watching.